Greetings all, and welcome to the 21st episode of TM Technical Movement. For today, we'll be taking a look at the Razorwind, Wrap, Bind, Wring Out, Crush Grip, Headbutt, Head Charge and Skull Bash attacks, and the Disable and Whirlwind techniques.
Much as its name suggests, the Razorwind attack involves generating a vicious whirlwind which, after existing for a short period of time, eventually dissipates into a series of blade-like currents that strike nearby opponents with considerable force. Although it utilizes wind as a direct weapon, the Razorwind attack deals damage through cutting force alone, and thus possesses the same basic characteristics found in normal type attacks. The Razorwind attack itself consists of two phases. During the first phase, the user generates an unstable and normally imperceptible whirlwind that rotates around it in an erratic fashion and at an increasing velocity. Eventually the move will enter its second phase, under which the whirlwind will violently destabilize and shed pieces of itself like shrapnel in the form of razor-sharp blades of air. The damage dealt by the attack is decently strong, but what makes the attack particularly powerful is that it can strike multiple opponents while suffering only 25% drop in base power, and that it causes an increased pain response within any target when it strikes, in turn giving the attack an increased chance of scoring a critical hit. It might be among the weakest of moves that require multiple turns to actually strike, and it may leave the user completely open to attack in the meantime, but considering it is one of the few normal type attacks capable of dealing decent amounts of special damage with a few other features thrown in, such as being affected by items like King's Rocks, it can certainly be useful to the few species able to learn it. It was for this reason that Silco decided to release the move as TMO2 within the first generation line of TMs, but lagging sales of the move's high cost, generally low reward attributes eventually led it to be discontinued. Unless a strong burst of wind can be used to destabilize or otherwise destroy the initial whirlwind created in this attack before it destabilizes on its own accord, there is no way to directly counter or dodge the Razorwind attack. Strong armor in general can help reduce and negate the amount of damage dealt by the attack, but weaker armor is unlikely to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether. The Razorwind attack is a rare enough move that it isn't likely to be something seen in most battles, but if the opposition does have access to it, it can be a difficult move to counter unless you have access to wind-based attacks that can cancel it out, or strong defenses and protection against critical hits to eliminate its most dangerous attribute. Similar to the Constrict attack, the Wrap attack involves user wrapping part or all of its body around an opponent and constricting tightly enough to immobilize the opposition and prevent them from easily escaping. While this move does seem to be very similar to the Constrict attack, the initial constriction upon execution is followed by a continuous constriction that deals slightly more damage and keeps the target in place until it is otherwise released from the attack. This in turn continuously deals damage to the opposition at a steady pace, about 12.5% of their maximum HP every couple of minutes, as the constriction cuts off blood flow. If let go long enough, this will eventually render the opponent unconscious and unable to battle. The amount of time spent constricting the opposition primarily depends on the user's stamina, but the continuous damage usually lasts for at least 4 or 5 combat turns before the user needs to release its grip to regain its strength. If the attack's initial force is used again while constriction is still occurring, however, it will not reset the amount of time before the grip is released, and may in fact loosen the grip in some cases, causing the attack to end earlier than normal. It is also duly noted that the duration of a Wrap attack can be increased with the Grip Claw, though the actual time of extension still depends on the stamina of the user. Since an opponent is using an appendage of some sort in order to execute a Wrap attack, striking otherwise damaging the offending appendage can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack. If this is not an option, however, moderately agile Pokémon should still be able to dodge the attack in close quarters. Armor can also help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack, but a loss of blood circulation stemming from the attack's constrictive forces will eventually begin to take its toll regardless of defensive shielding. While the Wrap attack is not guaranteed to actually hit or entangle all types of opponents equally, when it does hit, it is usually quite difficult to get an opponent to release its constriction without knocking them unconscious, and can thus be a difficult move to get out of, though a move like the Rapid Spin attack is still able to dislodge them instantly. Similar to the Wrap attack, the Bind attack involves user wrapping part of all of its body around an opponent and constricting tightly enough to immobilize the opposition and prevent them from easily escaping. The initial constriction in a Bind attack is followed by a continuous constriction that deals slightly more damage and keeps the target in place until it is otherwise released from the attack. This in turn continuously deals damage to the opponent at a steady pace, about 12.5% of the maximum HP every couple of minutes, as the constriction cuts off blood flow. If let go long enough, this will virtually render the opponent unconscious and unable to battle. The amount of time spent constricting the opposition primarily depends on the user's stamina, but the continuous damage usually lasts for at least 4 or 5 combat turns before the user needs to release its grip to regain its strength. If the attack's initial force is used again, while constriction is still occurring, however, it will not reset the amount of time left before the grip is released, and may in fact loosen the grip in some cases, causing the attack to end earlier than normal. Even though it is considered to be effectively equal in terms of function and mechanics to the Wrap attack, the Bind attack is differentiated from it because the presence of considerable amounts of friction among constituent parts alters the execution style and overall effectiveness of the attack. This friction makes the bind attack slightly slower, more difficult to execute, and slightly less accurate than the wrap attack, and it cannot be used to reach most targets at a considerable distance. Along those same lines though, the increased amount of friction between constituent parts also makes the attack far more effective at restraining larger opponents, and can often keep opponents much smaller than the user bound indefinitely, like with Pokemon like Onyx or Steelix. It is also duly noted that the duration of a bind attack can be increased with the Grip Claw, though the actual time of extension still depends on the stamina of the user. Since an opponent must use an appendage of some sort in order to execute a bind attack, striking otherwise damaging the offending appendage can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by this attack. If this is not an option, however, fairly agile Pokemon should still be able to dodge it in close quarters. Armor can also help reduce and negate the damage dealt by this attack, but a loss of blood circulation stemming from the attack's constrictive forces will eventually begin to take its toll regardless of defensive shielding. While the bind attack is not guaranteed to accurately hit or entangle all types of opponents equally, when it does hit, it is usually quite difficult to get an opponent to release his constriction without knocking them unconscious, and can thus be a difficult move to get out of, though a move like the rapid spin attack can still dislodge them instantly. As one might guess from its name, the Wring Out attack involves the user using long tentacles or similar appendages to forcefully constrict the opposition and damage them as they struggle. Though the attack is technically physical in every sense of the word, it is considered a special attack because the damage it does is apparently based on the special powers of the user, as usually the attack draws from the component of their offensive strength instead of the physical strength. As noted, in a Wring Out attack, the user wraps tentacles or similar appendages around the opponent and squeezes tightly. As the opponent struggles to break free, the constriction automatically increases, in turn dealing great amounts of damage as the opponent continues to struggle through the move until they reach the point of losing complete blood circulation, at which point the hold is released to prevent physical death. As a result of its functions, the damage done by the attack will depend upon how much energy the opponent has left, and thus will be most powerful when the target is at full health, decreasing steadily in base power as the opponent's health also decreases. This can make the auto attack a poor choice for long battles, but for ending a match just as quickly as it starts, this attack can prove to be a decent knockout blow that few others will see coming. Since an opponent must use an appendage of some sort in order to execute a Wring Out attack, striking otherwise damaging the offending appendage can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack. Otherwise, however, the attack is exceptionally difficult to dodge in close quarters. Strong armor in general can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack, but weaker armor is unlikely to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether at higher power levels. The Wring Out attack is a likely move to see among strategists that prefer to strike with intense offensive forces to warm up to more versatile attacks, so trainers that wish to keep their Pokemon in one piece should minimize the amount of contact they have with the opponent in close quarters to reduce the chances of the opposition getting close enough to execute this move. Considered to be the signature attack of Regigigas, the Crush Grip attack involves users smashing the opponent forcefully between the palms of its hands in order to inflict damage. This unique attack is effectively a testament to the colossal strength of Regigigas. Although it might not be as effective as it should be in most cases as a result of their slow start ability, its sheer damage potential in practice is enough to make it a serious threat in any battle. In a Crush Grip attack, the user grabs the opponent with its broad hands and slowly crushes them between the palms of its hands while exuding a powerful energy wave. As the opponent struggles to break free, the user manually increases the amount of force they apply, in turn dealing greater amounts of damage as the opponent continues to struggle through the move until they reach the point of losing complete blood circulation, at which point the hold is released to prevent physical death. As a result of its functions, the damage done by its attack will depend upon how much energy an opponent has left, and will thus be most powerful when the target is at full health, decreasing steadily in base power as the opponent's health also decreases. This can make the auto attack a poor choice for long battles, but for ending a match just as quickly as it starts, the attack can certainly prove to be a decent knockout blow that few others will see coming. Since a pair of hands is needed to execute a Crush Grip attack, striking otherwise damaging these appendages can help reduce and negate the damage the attack is capable of inflicting. Otherwise, however, it is exceptionally difficult to dodge the Crush Grip attack. Strong armor in general can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by this attack, but weaker armor might not be able to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether at higher power levels. The Crush Grip attack might not be a possible threat in any battle under most situations, but if the opposition has a Regigigas on their side, trainers who wish to keep their Pokemon, preferably ones with strong defenses, in one piece should minimize the amount of contact they have with the opposition in close quarters to reduce the chances of the opponent getting close enough to execute this move. In effect, the Headbutt attack involves charging straight into an opponent head first, inflicting considerable physical trauma in the process. The Headbutt attack is the most basic member of a group of attacks designed to allow Pokemon to use its hard head to deal massive amounts of damage in battle without fear of backlash. While it's generally considered to be a fairly fundamental attack, it is still nonetheless limited, and the only Pokemon with particularly thick skulls that are resistant to direct recoil can properly learn and utilize the attack in battle. Because the attack relies on a skull's resistance against recoil to deal damage, the amount of damage that actually can be done is fairly large, and the attack's general damage potential is astonishingly high. Moreover, the attack has incredible stopping power and is easily able to halt an opponent's attack pattern without much effort. In practice, this means that the attack has a 30% chance of causing an opponent to flinch when struck. While this means that the attack is unaffected by items like King's Rocks, this sort of stopping power among a fundamental attack is unmatched among basic moves. The attack is further helped by its normally perfect accuracy rate and its fairly low stamina cost, making it perhaps one of the greatest moves a beginning or intermediate trainer could possibly have at their disposal. It is less interesting to note that the attack is the sole move responsible for the tree bashing trend that started and died many years ago in the Kanto and Johto regions. While the attack wasn't originally considered to be all that useful outside of combat, when trainers began to realize they could have their Pokémon use a Headbutt attack to knock potentially rare Pokémon out of trees, the move became so wildly popular that Silph Co decided to release the move as TMO2 within the second generation line of TMs. Unfortunately, the craze did not last forever, and when it finally died, the team was discontinued to make way for trendier attacks. Since an opponent must use his head to execute a Headbutt attack, it can be exceptionally difficult to reduce the amount of damage the attack does without seriously hurting the opposition in the process, which is a problem as it is also exceptionally difficult to dodge in close quarters. Armor can, however, help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack. The Headbutt attack is a fairly versatile move and will likely see much usage among intermediate trainers, but its usage in professional combat is likely going to be little. Even so, its stopping power can more than make it a worthwhile move to be wary of, especially if an opponent has been cornered and has no other way to gain back a little ground, and should be thusly countered with decent defenses and protection against flinching if possible. Considered to be the signature attack of Bouffalant, the head charge attack effectively involves charging headfirst into an opponent at maximum force, with guard here in between for protection. In effect, this move is a powerful variation of the Headbutt attack that takes some of the features found in the utterly devastating Head Smash attack and slightly reduces them for the sake of self-preservation. The fluffy hair on the front of Bouffalant is made from many small fine hairs weaved together into a tight mass capable of absorbing and redistributing kinetic energy away from the skull of these beasts. When Bouffalant charged headfirst into an opponent at maximum force without any care for their well-being, the resulting attack gains both significantly more power than a traditional Headbutt attack and less recoil than a Head Smash attack because of this protective weave. The blow lacks the ability to truly stun an opponent because of the sheer amount of force involved in it, but because it is nothing more than a superpowered headbutt, it requires no more stamina than normal and is thus a viable tool for dealing damage in close quarters. The user of this attack receives about 25% of the damage dealt in the form of recoil, but in comparison to other moves, this really isn't so bad as long as the attack isn't used extensively in battle. In effect, the attack could be looked at as a simple variation on the double edge attack, though this would be simplifying it a great deal. Regardless, the sheer amount of damage the attack can do in practice, not to mention the attack is affected by items like King's Rocks, unlike the Headbutt attack, makes it a worthwhile attack for trainers to invest in if they happen to have a Bouffalant. Since an opponent must also use his head to execute a head charge attack, it can be exceptionally difficult to reduce the amount of damage the attack does without seriously hurting the opponent in the process, which is a problem as it is also exceptionally difficult to dodge in close quarters. Strong armor in general can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack, but weaker armor is unlikely to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether. The chances of seeing this move outside of a battle with the Bouffalant are completely nil, but it should nonetheless be watched out for under such situations because of the sheer amount of damage the attack is able to do under normal circumstances. As such, Pokémon with strong defenses and heavy armor are heavily recommended for taking the brunt of the attack's force, as unarmored Pokémon are likely to take catastrophic damage when the attack connects. In effect, the Skull Bash attack involves tucking in the head for a short amount of time before striking an opponent with a rocketing headbutt at close range. This headbutt-like attack could essentially be seen as the attack form of the basic withdraw technique. In saying so, however, it must be understood that only a limited number of Pokémon are able to learn the attack naturally as a result of their natural anatomy. The Skull Bash attack itself consists of two different phases. During the first phase, the user tucks in his head and begins storing elastic potential energy within its neck muscles. This in turn raises the user's defense stat temporarily, but the reasoning behind this is dependent upon the user's actual anatomy. For the members of the Squirtle family, this is because their armored shell protects them while their head is retracted inside. For others, this is due only to the tensing of their head and neck muscles as they store potential energy within the tissue. Once the neck muscles are fully tense and can store no more energy, the second phase begins. At this point, the user rushes towards the opposition and releases their neck muscles, causing their heads to rocket forward suddenly with tremendous forward momentum. The ensuing blow lacks the stopping power of other headbutt-style attacks, but the sheer amount of damage it can do without recoil is phenomenal. The fact that the user raises its defense stat automatically in response to the attack's preparation further makes it a great move surprising opponents unfamiliar with the Pokemon's full abilities, especially if the opponent is not too keen on using special attacks. Best yet, the attack is extremely hard to dodge because of its sudden execution, so it can more often than not prove to be a great way to deal steady physical damage to the opponent whenever the opportunity arises, even if it does take a little while to fully execute the attack. Not surprisingly, this is why Silph Co decided to release the move as TM40 within the first generation line of TMs, but because the move was less effective at protecting against damage when used by Pokémon other than those able to learn the move naturally, the move was quickly scrapped afterwards. Since an opponent must expectedly use its head to execute a Skull Bash attack, it can be exceptionally difficult to reduce the amount of damage the attack does without seriously hurting the opponent in the process, which is a problem as it is also exceptionally difficult to dodge in close quarters. Strong armor in general, however, can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack, though weaker armor is unlikely to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether. The chances of seeing the Skull Bash attack in professional combat are fairly unlikely, but if it is available to the opposition, strong defenses and some form of disruption are highly recommended for countering or at least preventing its full execution, as it is able to deal immense damage to just about anything it hits if the opponent has the chance to fully execute it. With a very little meaning to its name, the Disable technique involves using a curious psychic power to prevent the opposition from using the attack it last used for an extended period of time. The true mechanics of the Disable technique are still a bit of a mystery, but what is known is that the technique involves using a unique psychic frequency to temporarily scramble the mind of the opponent. The psychic wave itself is designed to induce amnesia within any Pokémon that hears it aside from the user, in turn forcing them to forget how to use the move they last used for about 4 combat turns. Although this effect is only temporary, the move's capacity to seriously wreck offensive and defensive strategies is more than evident. More importantly, if the opposition is so young that only knows how to use one move, Disable will effectively render them useless and force them to use a struggle attack until the effects wear off. The Disable technique's impact is best felt in short battles, so it isn't the best moves to rely on for serious battles. Even so, it can certainly prove to be a nasty surprise when used against an opponent that favors one particular move. The only way that a Disable technique can be countered is to either wait for it to wear off, or use a Pokémon possessing a move or ability that can negate its effects. If this is not an option, the move that has been disabled can only be called forth randomly through moves like Sleep Talk, Metronome, Copycat, or a Mirror move as examples. Also being as literal as its name can get, the Whirlwind technique involves whipping up a large gust of wind strong enough to blow away nearby Pokémon. While the gust attack utilizes a small amount of force to create a damaging burst of wind, the Whirlwind technique involves whipping up a gust so strong that it doesn't even have the chance to damage an opponent before it literally blows them away, though it generally cannot be executed before an opponent makes a move. Regardless of the size or weight of the opponent, and even if the opponent is in the middle of a fly attack, a Whirlwind will always blow them far away from the current position and turn ending wild Pokémon battles instantly. In trainer battles, this effect will be much the same as the Roar technique. The opposing target will be blown back with such force that the user will be hit by their own Pokémon and a different partner will be switched out in its place. The only major difference is that, because it relies on wind to remove a target, the Whirlwind technique is capable of affecting Pokémon that are in the first phase of a fly attack. Despite its simplicity, Silphco saw a lot of potential with this move and released it as TM04 within their first generation line of TMs. It wasn't long after, however, that they realized that the Roar technique could be learned by a far greater variety of Pokémon, so they scrapped the TM and went with its counterpart for all other successive generations. While a strong gust of wind can potentially destabilize it, as a result of its quick execution time, the Whirlwind technique is virtually impossible to counter in professional battles and difficult to counter in the wild. The only surefire way to counter the move is with a Pokémon that is of an equal or higher level, the latter mainly for wild Pokémon only, has the Suction Cups ability, or is otherwise trapped in the ground as a result of an ingrained technique.
That's it for now, but look forward to the next set of moves here on TM Technical Movement. Thank you all for watching this video. It always brings me great joy to see others enjoying the work I do to try and make the world of Pokemon and the fascinating creatures that lay inside of it feel as real as they possibly can. If you really enjoy my work, please feel free to leave a comment and subscribe, as I always do my best to respond to any and all comments that are left on my videos. In addition, if you wish to learn more about my work and help support it, you can find links to my Patreon page, as well as email and other contact information to my work on DeviantArt in the video description down below. Furthermore, you can find a link to my Discord server there as well if you'd like to get a first glimpse at what videos are coming up next and converse with other fans of the world of Pokemon. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.